49ers Intel time here from the owners' meetings. Beautiful Palm Beach, giving me Tahiti vibes, except this time we got to be a little bit more business-like about it with the Blazer. The Breakers, the site of John Lynch's press conference yesterday, Kyle Shanahan's this morning, and then Jed York's right after that. Got a lot of insight into the 49ers financial strategy, and it's stuff that we predicted, yes, but now it is firm, it is out there. It is on the record. The 49ers financial reset of this team is happening because they believe so much in Brock Purdy. He is the centerpiece for the 49ers moving forward because quarterback has to be the centerpiece. In fact, Jed York spoke today talking about how back in the Mike Nolan and the Mike Singletary eras, the 49ers had a great team defense-wise, but they didn't have a great quarterback. And because they didn't have a great quarterback, none of the good stuff on the defensive side of the ball mattered for San Francisco. If you don't have the QB locked in for the long term, you are not going to have good chances of stable success over the long run. So making sure that Brock Purdy and this contract is finalized is the quickest, most certain way for the 49ers to ensure perennial contention in the NFL. Now, based on what I gathered this week from the from this event, from the NFL owners meetings, the 49ers and Brock Purdy are getting closer and closer. In fact, there's even optimism that a deal can be finalized within the next couple of weeks. I wouldn't bet on that. I'm just saying that it seems that the vibes are very good coming out of this. I think that Jed York wants to get this done. I think that Brock Purdy's side wants to get this done. I think that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have wanted this done for a long time, and it would greatly benefit the 49ers to have everything in place heading into this 2025 season. Why don't we have a listen into Jed York talking about the 49ers' financial structure, their strategy, as it relates to the quarterback centerpiece, Brock Purdy.
Well, we make that distinction, say, you're being cheap. You should be
called worse.
I guess I know you kind of answered.
I think you guys have called me worse. At least a couple of you.
But how do you respond to that? Who people say, well, hey,
Look, I get it. Like, fans care, right? Like, you want to win, and when you're in a world where everybody is watching the NFL the first week of free agency, or at least the first 3 days of free agency, it's a frenzy, right? Like, you see a huge spike in social following and things like that because it's something to get engaged in. And when you're not overly active in that space, like, it's easy to say, you don't want to win. I think we have, a handful of Pro Bowlers and potentially even better players on our roster still. Like, we still have a pretty good roster. And you don't just have to do things the first 3 days in free agency, right? Like, you look at this Philadelphia Eagles last year. You go out and get a guy like Saquon Barkley, who's a future Hall of Famer, great player. Like, that's somebody that made a huge impact. I don't know that as we looked at the board that there was somebody that we felt made that type of an impact more so than making the decision to try to go pay Brock. And again, like, it's a decision that we made, I can't tell you exactly when, but midway through the season of we want to make sure that Brock is here for a long time. And again, like, you can't pay somebody quarterback money and have all of the other talent around the way we had. Now you have to start filling that piece with the draft. And that's the nice thing about having a lot of draft picks and having higher draft picks. We have the ability to continue to supplement our team by having somebody at the most important position there for a long time.
So that was Jed York this morning. A little bit before that, and maybe a little too early because we had the big party here at the Breakers last night, Kyle Shanahan had to attend the NFC Coaches Breakfast, an annual tradition, and unfortunately, NFC coaches always have to go on Tuesday morning, which is after the big NFL party on Monday night. I think it'd be a little bit more fair if they rotated on a year-to-year basis, if maybe you had AFC go Tuesday morning after the party one of these years, but unfortunately, the NFL, at least in this regard, does not care about fairness. So Kyle was a little bit tired, but Kyle did make it out to the NFC Coaches Breakfast, and this is what he had to say about San Francisco's construction this offseason.
The Rams went through a similar reset maybe 2 years ago, have done well with it. I mean, is that a guide for you guys to be able to reset the financial part of it while bringing in young,
Yeah,
especially defensive players?
I mean, that's a perfect example recently. I think Buffalo's similar to going through it. I think when we got here, we really tried to build this through the draft. And then we did most of our finances on re-signing our own players. And when you look at our breakout year at 19, I mean, I think that was the second year of a third-round pick in Fred Warner. It was the third year of a fifth-round pick in George Kittle. It was the first year of a fifth-round pick in Greenlaw. And we had, I think it was the third year of a sixth-round pick in DJ Jones. We had a lot of draft guys that we were able to work with and build, and to have a lot of success. And to have success again with those players for the next 5 years means you retain most of them. And now you're sitting there and you can't keep doing that forever. And the cool thing now is we still have been able to retain some of those guys. So it's not like we cleaned everybody out. We still got a bunch of guys around here who are big-time players, who have done a lot in the past and can still continue to do a lot here in the future.
So Shanahan today went for 32 minutes, and he delved into a lot regarding the 49ers' activities in free agency and their plans as a football team in 2025. First, he addressed Luke Farrell, the 49ers signing at that tight end position, and it was cool to see him verify a lot of what we had speculated. But again, now it's on the record. So Farrell, really good run-blocking tight end, and the 49ers had been missing that for the 2024 season. Remember that Charlie Werner was a great run blocker, even though he didn't catch a lot of passes for San Francisco in 2023 and in the 3 seasons before that. So Farrell has been signed to reprise that role for the 49ers, but Shanahan also added that he doesn't want George Kittle in pass protection as much. And Farrell's a good pass protector, so if you can allow George Kittle to get out and run more routes, the offense becomes more dynamic. So all of those reasons stated for the addition of Luke Farrell. And I'll go back to this. The 49ers in 2024 were the number 20 first down run efficiency team. They were number 31, that is second to last, in third and fourth down success rate when they ran the ball with less than 2 yards to go. So when they ran the ball and the opponents knew that it was likely coming, they didn't succeed. And Shanahan said one of the biggest problems was the lack of Charlie Werner. Eric Saubert did some nice things for the 49ers last year, but they needed an upgrade there, and that is Luke Farrell. Mac Jones, that's another name that's on everybody's mind. Now, Farrell played for Jacksonville last year. Mac Jones is from Jacksonville, which is not too far from where we're at the Breakers. And I have to say, the Breakers here in Palm Beach is absolutely awesome. We can pause this show, the football talk of it, to discuss a little bit of the food that we had here. They've got a seafood bar, which actually has a little fish tank built into the bar. So fish tacos with little clownfish right behind the tacos. Like, this is a real shot. I'm not kidding. And there were some of the best tacos I've ever had. Although, I've never had a more expensive sandwich. The $49 seafood club sandwich, I guess it's apt that it was $49 as we're covering the 49ers here in Palm Beach. And then, during the party that we're talking about with Kyle Shanahan and all these characters, it's the best party of the year, at least as far as the NFL is concerned. During the party, we saw this group of hermit crabs. Supposedly, a group of hermit crabs is called a cast of hermit crabs. And as you can see, in this cast of hermit crabs, there are football helmets. And the one wearing the 49ers helmet is just absolutely dominating, going over the top of the one wearing the Giants helmet. The 49ers happen to play the New York Giants this year, so I think that's a prediction for one of the games this season. We'll be headed to the Meadowlands, that game technically in New Jersey, because remember, the only team in New York is the Buffalo Bills. But 49ers Giants, the hermit crabs predict that one. 49ers are gonna waltz all over the Giants. Anyway, back to Mac Jones. Somehow we went from Jacksonville, I guess Jacksonville is just north of here. We're talking about Mac Jones, Jacksonville native, and the Breakers, iconic resort that's actually burned down twice. They've rebuilt it into this beautiful, beautiful construction. It's the host of the NFL owners meetings every 3 years. Shanahan said that what really impressed him about Mac Jones when they considered picking him back in 2021, obviously they went with Trey Lance instead, but what impressed him about Mac Jones coming out of Alabama was his ability to play the position. Same kind of compliment that they had for Brock Purdy. The difference between Jones and Purdy is that Purdy can raise the ceiling of an offense with his mobility in a way that Jones obviously can't. but Jones could be a good QB2 for the 49ers. QB1 obviously being Brock Purdy, whom the 49ers seem very confident that they'll be able to reach a contract agreement with. Matt Barrows, our friend Matt Barrows, asked Kyle Shanahan today why the 49ers didn't sign Dre Greenlaw before he hit free agency. Obviously, he's with the Broncos now. And Kyle Shanahan said, we tried to. And I think that illustrates an important point, and it's one that Jed York got into as well today. You can't force anybody to sign a contract. It's not like this unilateral thing that a team does. And I get it that a lot of people play Madden and you put on franchise mode and you click a button and a player sign. In real life, it doesn't work that way. In real life, the team signs on the dotted line because they agree with the contract terms they put out there. And then you have to wait for the player to also sign on the dotted line. And the contract doesn't come into effect until both sides sign. And obviously, in the case of Dre Greenlaw, both sides didn't sign. I have a hunch why. Because Dre Greenlaw didn't want to be here. Well, maybe he wanted to be here, but this is a nice spot. But he didn't want to be in Santa Clara. He wanted to be the number one guy. He wanted to run his own shop with the number one defense in Denver. 49ers obviously slid defensively. One thing that I asked both Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch is, how are you going to fix this run defense? Because that obviously was a huge problem without Dre Greenlaw. And Shanahan and Lynch both indicated that Robert Saleh, who's returned as the defensive coordinator, is going to really help the 49ers in that regard. Shanahan said that, when you have as many injuries as the 49ers did last year, you start relying a lot more on scheme and on experienced coordinating, which the 49ers didn't have. And if you're relying on that and it's, not there, it could get ugly. And it did for the 49ers as they slipped all the way down to number 29 in run defense. And then one thing I told Kyle in response is, I remember 2017, 2018. 49ers had not great personnel those two seasons on defense, but even though the overall rankings were still bad, they were decent against the run in both of those years. And that leads me to believe that Robert Saleh is indeed somebody who can scheme up at least help for the run defense to make it better than last year, which could be a step forward for the 49ers. One thing I asked Kyle today, DeMarcus Robinson, the new receiver. By the way, today's April 1st. No Brandon Ayuk move. There's not going to be a Brandon Ayuk trade. The trigger date is today, so it has come and gone. DeMarcus Robinson is there to help the 49ers fill the gap while Ayuk is out at the start of the season, presumably. Robinson can play all three wide receiver spots. He can play the X, he can play the Z, he can play the F, and the X is crucial because that's where Brandon Ayuk plays. I think that you're going to see a rotation of Juwan Jennings and DeMarcus Robinson in that X wide receiver spot for the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey is a theme coming out of these owners' meetings. I talked for a while with Jed York yesterday. Jed York talked again today. Then we got this from both Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. If McCaffrey is healthy, and I think that there is a big-time confidence from the 49ers that he is locked in, and I can tell you from my own perspective, I talked to Christian, and he seems locked in for this year. I've covered him since 2014 at Stanford. He is a pivot point for this team. He's one of the best players to ever do it at that running back position, right? If he is available, ready to go, and he's fully healthy right now, he's working out hard, the 49ers, I think, can have a very good year. And that is a message that I got from a lot of the 49ers leadership here at the owners' meetings this week. Seems to me that Spencer Burford is now a tackle, not a guard, although Kyle Shanahan said he could play everywhere. I'm getting the sense that his move to swing tackle last year might become permanent. Shanahan today said that he's been happy with the play of Jake Brendel and Colton McKivitz, and it doesn't seem like Matt Hennessy is going to be in much of a competition with Jake Brendel at center. So, this is one that fans are going to disagree with, and John Lynch says that he doesn't follow the social media narrative. I will say, though, that the key words from John Lynch on this matter, and Kyle Shanahan has indicated the same, is that the 49ers are looking to upgrade this offensive line through the draft no matter who they say that they like. And if Armand Membu, if Will Campbell, maybe even Kelvin Banks, if one of those guys, the tackles, is there at pick number 11, I would expect the 49ers to take a big swing for offensive line improvement. I think they could also find guys that could help the interior later. It doesn't benefit them at this point to trash their existing offensive linemen in the media. You have to see what you get in the draft and then determine how guys are going to compete. You can improve any position on a football team, right? Teams are big. There's always going to be a weak link or a weaker link. We just have to see where the 49ers are able to allocate their draft resources. It is a crapshoot in the NFL draft, and we will see how the 49ers proceed. But it is worth noting what Shanahan said about Jake Brendel, and it's worth noting, and it's not worth freaking out about. Shanahan said, I hope not on a Brock Purdy holdout. I think all my viewers just want a contract done, so I think they would agree with Kyle Shanahan there. And then a big piece of news today, the 49ers will bring in kicking competition for Jake Moody. Remember at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, which doesn't look like this? We're not going to mistake this from Indianapolis. I remember when we showed up to Tahiti and I said, hey, look, we made it early to the NFL Combine in Indy. Obviously, that was a joke, but way back in a much colder environment, a colder, grayer environment, I asked John Lynch about bringing in competition for Jake Moody, and he said, I think that's something we're really going to have to consider. Today at breakfast, Kyle Shanahan verified that the 49ers will bring in competition for Jake Moody. They are scouting college kickers, but they're leaning toward signing a veteran. And that would happen after the draft to compete with Jake over this offseason and the preseason to try to get the best out of Jake and maybe unseat him if Jake Moody struggles following the high ankle sprain continued. A name, Nick Folk. He's 40 years old, but he's only missed 2 kicks over the past 2 seasons. So his 2 best seasons kicking in his entire career have come at age 38 and 39, and now this is going to be age 40. So if you want to bring in a solid veteran who's going to bring stiff competition to Jake Moody, who might even beat him out, Nick Folk, if he agrees to sign on the dotted line, since it takes that, might be that guy for the 49ers. Finally, run game coordinator, new position for San Francisco, Brian Fleury, their tight ends coach. Talked about how bad the run game was last year. Chris Furster is not the run game coordinator anymore. That's the O-line coach. He now has an assistant head coach title. The tight ends coach, Brian Fleury, former college quarterback who's done a lot for the 49ers behind the scenes schematically, is going to be coordinating that run game. It's the same position that Mike McDaniel once had. McDaniel, now the head coach of the Dolphins, we got to see him this weekend. It was really cool at the party. There was a time there at the end of the party where you had Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, D'Amico Ryans, and Richard Hightower, who's here for some of the special team stuff, some of the rules changes and the rules meetings. All of those guys, former 49ers coaches and the current head coach, Kyle Shanahan, in one spot. So this is a coaching staff that's seen a big-time brain drain. One of the big replacements for McDaniel in terms of crafting the run game has been Brian Fleury. And Brian Fleury is now the official run game coordinator for the 49ers. Last thing, Kyle Shanahan said this: I think there's going to be more competition than ever at training camp this year for starting spots for the 49ers, which is funny to hear because the roster obviously right now, it's going to be younger, might not be quite as strong for San Francisco, but we'll see what they do in the NFL draft as they renovate it. And the one thing that I think breeds winning is competition. Kyle Shanahan thinks there'll be more of that than ever. All right, guys, it's going to be time to get going. Why don't we take a look out at the yachts in the water? I see 2 right now, right? You see one over there. You see one off in the distance. You see several fishing boats. People enjoying their life on the water in South Florida. Time for us to hop on a plane and get out of here, although I think that Lombardi herself probably wants to stay a little bit longer.